Good afternoon, Dr. Shobana P. Mathews. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Dr. Shobana is from Christ University, Bangalore, and she is with the Department of English and Culture Studies. She's done her PhD in spatiality and sound, and she has been my literature teacher earlier on, and she's a fascinating person to have a conversation with. She's also been awarded the title of the coolest literature teacher in Bangalore by some of the newspapers in the city. So thank you for being here and welcome to the interview.
Hi, Sham. Thank you for saying those things, nice things about me, which I finding it difficult to believe in after all these years.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get on with what you wanted to ask me about, talk about today.
The late Sir Ken Robinson, he said that creativity is as important as literacy. And since he said that in 2016, do you think that education has changed in any way to accommodate creativity?
These questions are, questions which have to be answered at some level historically also, because one thing is this notion that creativity is a separate entity and does not inform our daily lives is something which we need to get over. Yeah. And for the longest time, for a lot of us as teachers, we go into the profession because, I think we've all seen and wanted to imitate what we've seen in our situations where we grew up. And what we saw was teachers holding sway over a class, and that power, that sense of power and authority is something which a lot of teachers mimicked, at least my generation of teachers, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when you say creativity, it has to be taken from there. What is our understanding of our profession and what is our understanding of what we do in a classroom? And I've said this quite often of late, I don't know if I've said it to you all, but I enjoy teaching at the university because I believe there's a natural progression from teaching to researching to this point in our lives when we start talking about professing. Right? So hence the title professor. And I think these are all time practices, time bound practices or time driven. See, because it's not easy to just be creative like that. What is creative? You have to look at, for me, being creative has been a part of continuing what the text says, because we work in a liberal arts field. Literature is a liberal space, and creativity is at the core of the production of the text. So what are we doing, when we teach it in class, is actually unleashing the same creativity which is in that text, right? So going back into that process. So if I have to talk to you about Wordsworth, I mean, just taking a very mainstream example, somebody like Wordsworth or Shelley, it's not enough to just talk about the poem, because then that would be a very dead way of looking at it. So therefore the next question comes in, if we broke down the elements of creativity. So is creativity, for me, creativity has been experiential, right? Now, experiential does not necessarily mean how does one experience a poem? There are many ways. And I would like to go back partly on the journey that the artist took to achieve this set of words in this set of, in this time and space. So to enter that, we need to go to these places or ideas, revisit these things. And that has to happen. It's a very, lived experience. So I don't know whether you would call that. Now, the thing is, creativity has often become reduced to being gimmicky. I mean, I know people, are there's so much pressure on us to perform in the classroom today because of evaluations and things that we're now getting, we'll use anything at our disposal. So from illustrations to, that I use a lot of music in my classrooms. Yeah. But I think it's a very common sense thing. You need to have a strategy. I mean, what are you trying to do with this, right? So there is no place for not having logic. So I think creativity is a very logical process. And it's become so rare for us to be logical in things we do. Because, we've all given in to the emotion and being swept away and ratings and things. It's everywhere, not just media people. All of us have gone the way of that. So, being bound by certain parameters and things. So I think it's just common sense, which is rare, to shut up and sit down and to think about what someone was trying to do and to surrender yourself. I mean, you can't stand there. I can't stand in a class and say, I'm Shobana Mathews coming to teach you. At that moment, I'm literally nobody, because I have to allow that poet, that writer, the thing to allow them to speak through, the power. And all you can do is succumb. So to create a situation like that, you need to take it out of the syllabus, the exam, and all of this. And a lot of teachers are doing it today. We're all at different levels. I'm guessing a little reckless also you have to be. I'm good at that, being extremely reckless. Because it's not that you're breaking the law just for the fun of it. Not,
Yeah.
I mean, when I say law, I don't mean uh, civil law. I mean the laws of thought.
Yeah.
What we can think and what we can't. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very open. I guess that would be the most defining thing about how I teach or whatever is the fact I'm very respectful of this, that I cannot control anybody's thoughts. It's not
Yeah.
possible. So it's only the poet, and the poets can control our thoughts. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen it happening, how it's shaped all of us. So to not get in that way is a very creative thing to do, to get
Okay.
out of that completion. Because the poetry, it's like a circuit, like I've said, right? The source of all of that, and then it completes it through the interaction with the audience. So if you don't
Yeah.
get in the way, I think a lot of teaching and good teaching is about staying out of that, allowing your
Okay.
students to discover, to just be to provide that surge of electricity or whatever, and just shut up and stay out of everyone's way discovering. And the problem is we do that a lot. We've been
Hmm.
trained as English teachers to get in there and to say
Yeah.
this is a beautiful piece that I'm going to teach you. I do it myself, and then you
Yeah.
have to backtrack it and say, well, do you find it beautiful? If
Yeah.
so, how? And those kind of things. So it's not that it's just that I think we've associated creativity with gimmickiness. So we
Hmm.
feel the more things we bring into a classroom, I think the simple. I'm all for simplicity and minimalism. So the less the teacher intrudes in a classroom, the more creative it becomes. The experience
Yeah.
becomes.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think I completely agree with you. And when you were talking about creativity being gimmicky and students being told to do certain things to seem creative, I think that's very popular these days. And one thing that is not so popular is going back to the text and going back to the moment that those words were chosen and put in a certain order to create a
Mm.
certain experience. So letting the students
Yeah.
go through that path and the journey and discover these things on their own, and then coming back together and discussing and creating a new reality of that same poem or same text in their present situation. I think that is the aspect of creativity that we all like to talk about. So moving on to my next question, when we think about English language education in a country like India or anywhere else, English language education, do you think it should focus just on the mechanical aspects of language, particularly writing, or should it also kind of try to include aspects of creativity and how you can use the language creatively? What are your takes on that?
I mean, there's two ways. I mean, at least I can speak for this in a very lazy way, which I am also, but that because I'm not a trained language teacher, so
Yeah.
my teaching of English language is very intuitive. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm constantly trying to think. Okay, I mean, with due respect to all those who are professionally trained in the world of language teaching, at one level, I also think, I go back to my experiences with studying another language, whether it was French or Tamil, which should have come to me as my mother tongue, but did not. Well, it has, but that's in a very casual way. So my formal
Hmm.
acquisition of Tamil as a language was in classrooms, which failed miserably.
Yeah.
Because I was just given books to read and told most of the time, how there's a little bit of snobbishness, what you can't speak the language, you can't understand
Hmm.
it the way I understand it. All that. So
Yeah.
I'm very conscious about these things when I'm teaching English, because I realize this is unlike our regional languages, which have certain other political moorings and things. English has become, free for all, anyone, anywhere, that kind of thing. So this,
Yeah.
I like to work first with my students' egos. I mean, that this belongs to you. It's all right.
Mm.
I mean, and not like, I know it's not a nice thing to say that, I can tolerate errors, but who am I to say anything about it? Because I know the number of times I've been corrected by native speakers, not so much with grammar, because we've been dealing with reading for this long. So hopefully our grammar's decent. But things like accents and emphasis and, how I didn't realize how much of mother tongue influence, was in my own speech. So until I had people, native speakers point out to me that I used very Tamil inflection when I spoke, very Tamil. These kind of things are so, and now, of course, as you grow older, your roots tug harder. So
Yeah.
you begin to realize how beautiful how robust your mother tongue is. And let me say this before I go any further. I have absolutely no regrets in not being a someone who reads and writes positive Tamil. I'm very happy to, I flourish with the street Tamil that I speak. It has stood me in good stead. It has given me all. So I'm not one of those who sits there and laments over the loss of mother tongues and things. I've made my peace with it, for better or for worse. And I love the fact that I've also conquered, in my own imagination, English enough to be able to express these very, rowdy thoughts of mine in a language. So I think it's first of all about empowering your students to believe that that can happen, that they actually wear this language with ease. It's like just like we tend to treat our mother tongues also, at least in the kind of circles that we all come from, where we've been through these English medium schools and gone to colleges and universities where English is the language of instruction. We've done these BAs and MAs and PhDs in English literature, which is largely Eurocentric. We tend to treat our mother tongues also as pieces, like artifacts. So you strut it out on an ethnic day or on a Pongal where we all dress up in our costumes. It's not even your regular clothes. So I've tried to break away from that. No, I mean, see, it's like more like Halloween or something. So
Exactly.
I know I'm going to be lynched by all my Tamil compatriots, but that's how it is. But I've lived my life trying to get away from that and to bring bring my very street Tamil, because I have this argument with the scholars of Tamil. I mean, good for you because you can read in the original. I can't. But that doesn't stop me from experiencing the same Tamil experiences or whatever that is, cultural experiences at my level. Because remember, when you're, you're talking about Sangam poetry, while the performances were going on, the dances and the singers, dancers and singers were performing, there would have been a peripheral crowd like where I find myself now. And how do I voice all of this? Because I don't have that classical expression. I have to take Tamil and take English, sorry, and, take away its legitimacy to be this foreign language. I never see English as a foreign language. It's so native, Tamil native.
Yeah, and
So
I completely agree with the way you were talking about wearing the language with confidence. English and the hot topic in English language education is that English is a world language. It's no longer an American or a British language. And to be able to take ownership of the language and to experiment with the language while you're learning it, I think that's something that students would really enjoy, rather than being told to do certain things and not to do certain things, but to just gain a kind of exposure to the language and then play around with the elements on their own to create something and to experience it however they choose, as long as communication is achieved to a certain extent.
even if it's miscommunicated, sometimes it's good fun to see the rubbish that happens. For recently in a creative writing class, I got sick of teaching people how to write, how to express themselves using metaphors and similes, and everyone's giving me these very European or non-Indian images, because now, of course, that haiku is cool, so people are also appropriate. We'll go everywhere except back home, naturally. So I got so frustrated with the class, which was trying to give me very European or Far East symbols and iconography. I said, okay, just go home, because we're all locked in anyway. I said, so you're with your parents, with your family, go home. Go back to your dining tables. Think of the insults that your family heaped on you as a child, I could think of my own, the number of times I've been called a stubborn donkey or a mad dog or something. And, in Tamil, it's very affectionate. I was talking to a scholar who is a Sahitya Academy winner, who was telling me that at home he refers to his siblings as dogs, like ask dog whether it will come to eat its dinner now or whether it wants to dinner later. And, there was this sense of shock. I said, see, you cannot, that's how it is. So you better learn, talk. So my class actually went, had over lunch, sat down with their families and dug out old insults, old endearments, and a lot of our South Indian languages are very boisterous languages, Indian languages. And so they found proverbs also where, like in Tamil, we say, talk about, I don't know why, but I said, a lot of the things we say are politically incorrect. Like certain communities, certain trades and professions are the butt of all the jokes. Like the barber in Tamil literature, Tamil culture it seems to be the person who gets all the jokes. So there's this proverb, but if you're very unemployed and you don't know what to do, but you create your own to look busy. about the unemployed barber who sat and shaved a donkey. So, these kind of things. So if you are trying to look very important, the casual passerby would be, you're like that barber who did this, shaved a donkey to look like he's very relevant. So I mean, see, I don't know, maybe Irish poetry and literature and other cultures. So why not, instead of going across oceans and seas and looking for your voice, why don't you just find it within you? And the best place to find it is not in, lofty things like love and all. Many of us have turned cynical about this. Let's find it in the robust insults and proverbs, and then take it from there. It will inform everything we do.
Okay, it already sounds.
That's what creative for me.
Yeah, when you talk about language and writing like that, it already sounds a lot more fun than it usually is made to be. A lot of the times, children are driven away from writing because of the way the activities and projects are created. It's just tedious. It becomes really tedious for the student to sit down and craft something to perfection. So, how do you think you can make a writing project fun for students? Let's say young adults, to be more specific.
So something that I've been seething about recently is this concept of fun, right? And I think again, as teachers, we've fallen for our own. We need to re-examine the words we use, because when did it become fun to be not thinking, right? When is fun not intellectual, right? Somewhere we've taught our young people from school, I'm guessing, because I deal with it when they enter university, that let's have fun today. Let's not have a class today. Let's do something fun. So I've reached those breaking points where I threatened to bring, the man with the monkey and the drums to class and say, is this what you want? Right? Do you want to just be passive spectators? Do you want to be, it's not even entertainment. It's some kind of, killing your mind, and you know how I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and I'm going to can't go through any talk without bringing in rock and roll. But then, I mean, they anticipated this, that thought control and mind-numbing experiences, and that's not what a class should be. So it's okay to be, I'm guessing, in the climate today, we can afford to take some liberties. Of course, it's dangerous, but why can't we look at, the fact that everyone should understand. I'm not going to talk about students, but I think we talk about teaching community. We need to understand that thoughts, thinking cannot be controlled, and thinking is a great thing. So if we can start thinking in our classes, and if you go back to Francis Bacon, how do I know that you're thinking? How do I know that you're even on the same page as I am? How do I know? How do I know that you're not thinking of something else and wondering why you're sitting here in this interview, or why me? So, I mean, at that point, I have to stop and say, so, Sam, what do you think? I mean, and how does it feel? Or how uncomfortable are you? And it doesn't have to be from me. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of us teachers want to be the power centers of classes. I know we are taught blended learning, flipped learning, all this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, when it comes to practice, we all go right back to that, I'm the center of this class kind of, including me. I mean, we all do this. I'm no less guilty of this. And we have ways of, justifying it by saying, oh, but teachers are the fountain of thoughts. And we have students also who would flatter us into this. Right? Even in my master's classes, I have students who are sitting very passively telling me, but we came to hear you. And I'm like, yes, but you didn't come to hear me. You came to hear yourself in conversation with me. Otherwise, hearing me, I mean, just, so those kind of things, I think we also need to remember that fun is not necessarily about jumping around. I mean, age appropriate fun, right? We can't be still, playing with building blocks and things. I mean, no harm in that at all. Due respect to all those who are working in these fields. But especially for literature, especially for academia, isn't it about thinking aloud in class? And isn't it about challenging? Every student comes to me and says, I want to challenge myself. And the minute you challenge them, this is too hard. I don't want to think. I want to have fun. But thinking is fun. And disruptive thinking is a lot of fun. And I think right now what's happening is we're protecting our children and our students a lot, which is contraindicative, because what's happening is we're not preparing them for the real world where there are no solutions. And like I keep saying over and over again, literature offers us the best thing. There are no solutions, only resolutions, which means you discover paths to deal with these harsh realities. I cannot tell you. The world is a very different place from when I went to university. And my own university is not what it was in those days. So how can I teach you anything? The only thing I can do is provoke your thoughts, which means I have to be, sometimes it's painful if I have to tell you that what you're thinking is pointless. and you have to defend yourself. I mean, you can continue to think those pointless thoughts. It's okay, but do you have a logic in it? So if you're not willing to think, then there's no fun. What fun is that? You want me to? It's like an anesthetic. You want me to just make my classes numb, and you can sit back and clap for me. I don't need that. I mean, I tell my classes, I have all my degrees safely locked up. I don't need your validation. What I need is your, discomfort. I need your anger. I need your all of that. So I've gone through all of that. I've been outraged by my teachers. I've been made to defend myself at every level. Person, I mean, as a woman, as a teacher, as a student of literature, as my ideologies, everything have been questioned, and I feel really good about it. Every time it's questioned, it's like, okay, bring it on. I'll tell you why.
Making a writing project fun is not necessarily making it unthinking and relaxed for the students. It's more about challenging them and getting them to take a stand, really, and to have a voice for themselves and say what they want to say. And then you can probably discuss the mechanical aspects of it as a post, writing experiment where you finish writing and then sort the mechanical aspects of it out.
The mechanical aspects will come, no, the logic and the order, which they will need to put into place to make what they're saying. If they have to convince me and I'm their worst enemy. So, if they have to battle me down, then everything has to be in place. They'll look for it, aggressively.
So moving on to our last question for today, we're all stuck in this predicament, and the global pandemic has taken all of us by shock. Because I remember when back in college, people used to ask us, "What's your 5-year plan? What are you going to do after 5 years?" And then 5 years down the lane, the world has changed, and it's a completely new world. So, do you think there's value in students being asked to write their experiences of the pandemic or write stories about the pandemic? Why do you think there's value in that?
Again, I'm a little conflicted on this. One thing is, at least if we are to go by some of our writing, poetic composition ideas, which we have been trained to believe in, that it's powerful emotions recollected in tranquility. I'm thinking, yes, we're going through very powerful emotions right now on a daily basis. Fear, uncertainty, all powerful emotions are not love and romance. So the powerful emotions of uncertainty, whether I myself am going to make it through what? Is there a through? Is there going to be is this a tunnel or is it a dead end? We don't know. I mean, there's so much of this uncertainty, there's all of that. So rather than there's one way of looking at it. One way would be experience all of this now, like really go through it. Something which I've lived my life by is to, if I don't know whether this word exists, but metaphorize the moment, So like when I'm feeling something right now, I have a very dual experience going on in my head. Like when I'm hurt, when I'm upset, when I'm angry, when I'm, ashamed of things I've done. One of the things I do, it's not a coping mechanism. It's just become practice for me, is to constantly try to metaphorize this experience. So whatever it is, whether it is a loss of a loved one or a childbirth, even, I'm constantly thinking of, give me a metaphor for this, and why? Because metaphors for me are memories. I won't feel this feeling again, good for good or better or for worse. I'm not going to feel this moment of pain, thankfully, sometimes, and sometimes it's a loss, because when I experience this beauty again. So instead of taking out my camera or writing about it at that moment, in my head I'm processing it through the portal of metaphors. I'm thinking, okay, this feels like this and this, but that's a simile, and or the pain of this is like this, or I start creating an analogy in my head, and later, and it's unbelievable that many years later, I mean, I can still go through that experience, recollect, and I really feel what Wordsworth said made sense, recollected in tranquility. So that's one way of looking at it. The other, of course, more therapeutic aspect is when you write about it, you seem to kill the moment. So if you're going through extreme pain, like these pandemics and things, write about it, and some kind of a thing. I'm not a huge fan of that.
When you said kill the moment or have a therapeutic experience, I actually disagree with that, because I think when you write about something, you're experiencing it all over again, and you're opening up uncertainties, wounds, despair, and even hope. So every time you're writing about something, I think you're just living through that entire process again. And the way you talked about metaphorizing things, it's probably a three.
Let me interrupt. The writing is not the reliving it. It's that when you read what you've written, right? So the writing still is a slightly numbing process, I think. I mean, that's how I'm just me being not letting you have the last word. But I'm thinking, see, we read to ourselves also. We forget this a lot. We always think I
Yeah,
write
we
for a
do.
reader, but the first reader is us. And that's a very
Exactly.
different person. Yeah, the reader in you is a very different person from the writer. So
I
critical, so
completely agree. I
nasty.
completely. Yeah, yeah. And we agonize over each word that we choose to
Yes,
put in. And that
that
agony is what
agonizes.
I was,
That
yeah.
person agonizes.
So
No, I mean, it's easy to
we're
get.
experiencing different stages of agony while
Yes,
writing. Uh,
yeah.
why
I
do it
think
then? Why? Yeah,
creative writing classes need to address all this, because we just make it look easy. There's a
yeah,
write a poem or write a thing. It's possible, but you need to prepare a student for this. That
yeah,
I can say it's lovely what you've written, but are you happy with it? Does
yeah,
it satisfy the voice in your head? These kind of
yeah,
things. It's such a experience. So that's what
yeah,
writing about this pandemic. We need to kind of first experience, not the, God forbid, you don't have to experience the virus itself, but you're experiencing
yeah,
the condition
yeah.
that this has put us into. So keep your sensory perception receptive.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Dr. Shobna. It was great chatting with you and talking about writing and creativity. It feels like I was back in one of your classes. Thank you so much for your time. And we do hope to speak with you again.
Thank you so much. We wouldn't have been this polite if it was class. But anyway, thanks. It
Yeah,
was fun. Really nice connecting with you.
sure.
Bye, Shah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.